So this isn't going to be a very cheery one. I was looking at some of the online commentary about the sentencing of the Rwandan boy who murdered the 3 children in Southport in Lancashire last summer, and all the fallout from that, and talking about the sentencing, and if he could have been sentenced under terrorism laws, it would have been better, it would have been a better sentence, and the sentence, he's spending the rest of his life basically in prison. That's not even an issue. The fact that so much hot air has been wasted on it is absurd, and it's a complete and utter deflection from the much larger problem that the native folks shouldn't be in proximity to such a feral creature. I mean, that's just all there is to it, and it has to be stated bluntly and plainly like that. It is certainly one of those situations where I personally would favour the death penalty. I mean, it just goes without saying, like, that you'd favour the death penalty for something like this. And I mean, obviously a lot of other people would think that too, and that I read a lot of digressions about the morality of the death penalty. I mean, we're talking about very rarefied circumstances here. We're talking about a situation where the person has been caught, red-handed, and that you can mean that in multiple senses. There's no issue with guilt or proof here. It's totally manifest what happened. It's not like this. Oh my God! Eventually, DNA evidence, showed that he wasn't the perpetrator or exonerated him. That's not the case here. So I mean, I think that'd be sending such a signal. Anyone, but particularly people who don't or from an alien culture. This is what's going to happen to you. Public execution, right? So in some of the more reactionary circles I was looking in, a few people mentioned the case of the execution of Damien, which I'd never heard of before. He was about 1750 or something. I think he was like palace staff in Versailles. I think something like that. Anyway, it was Louis XV. Anyway, it was the monarch at the time, and he, because he disagreed or disliked the monarch, he tried to stab him with a penknife. So he was arrested and tortured and this, that, and the other. And his execution was arranged. I wish I hadn't read it. I had to read through the details of his execution. On the day of his execution, he was taken, from his cell. They began with the hand that he used to hold the penknife to stab the monarch. They pulled his hand apart with red-hot pliers and then filled the wounds with molten lead. They then proceeded to cut deep wounds into his body and filled these wounds with molten lead and sulphur. They then took him to his place of execution, cut his penis and his balls off, then tied his arms and hands, his hands and his feet to 4 horses to have him pulled apart. The horses weren't strong enough to dismember him, they just dislocated all his limbs, so they went in and cut his ligaments, and then his 2 of his legs and his arm was pulled off, and he was still alive. And they then burned the still living torso and head until he eventually died. Now, history books are hazy about the account of what his last words were. The romantic version is that it was some version of this day will go hard as he was being brought from his cell. But other testimony indicates that he was just screaming to God for him to die, let him die. Where where is death, where is mercy, you know. And why mention any of that? It's just, I find that very frustrating when you have reactionary types absolutely shiting on in Twitter comments saying that somehow would be a just punishment. As disgusting as the creature that murdered those little girls is, and as deserving of death as he is, wringing his neck publicly with the public to see it will be more than enough, I think, proper catharsis for what happened, you know. So that I hate seeing nonsense like that sort of depravity is to be celebrated. Incidentally, it was actually, that execution was so infamous that it was actually part of the reason why the revolution in the 1780s actually, or 1790s actually came about. It was stuff like that gave a raison d'etre to the revolutionaries. So anyone thinking that was somehow was a good outcome, you know, ridiculous. So yeah, I again, like, I mean, it's been a bad week. It's been a few weeks, like months, you know. It's kind of relentless, really, you know. It's indicated to me though, and I was talking to someone else briefly who, you know, closer to me, who would share similar views. Like, you know, you really need to take breaks away from a lot of this stuff, and you know, find things to enjoy as well. You know, that in fact that makes me want to digress to another point. I've seen some of the stupidest infighting in, you know, kind of right wing, you know, circles. Idiocy, just sheer idiocy. If people are 80% in agreement with each other, that's all you need. You don't need to have groupthink or 100% compliance on all issues and matters. You really don't. And ascribing, you know, cynical money-making motives to people producing content. Idiocy, utter idiocy. But very reassuringly, the intelligent voices are largely ignoring it because it's the equivalent of ignoring the fucking pub drunk, you know. Really, you just endure them until they just go off to the jacks for a puke and then fuck off home. Anyway, you know, okay, not the cheeriest video. I think the sea there is a kind of a metaphor for the maelstrom of occasionally that our poor minds are in, you know, when things are particularly grim. But there'll be a calm after the storm, of course there will. You know, this beach is actually going to look lovely at the end of it all. The sand will be lovely and white, and there's some serious breakers going over the pier head there. Really super dangerous if anyone was down there. There was a young lad down here in the 80s at Port. Himself and some other boys were playing down near the lighthouse there in a storm, and he got washed in. It's dreadful, like, you know, poor little devil. I knew him. Went to school, but anyway, you know, could I not have even mustered a reasonably happy end to the video? No, I couldn't. I'm sorry, I couldn't. I might link something nice in the information card at the end there though. Thanks for listening.